Welcome, Katharine Halpin. It's so good to have you on my show. Folks, let me introduce somebody. Um, I know I say this a lot, but please believe me, this is a really special human being. This is someone, you hear me talk about it all the time, and I'm very drawn to people like Katharine who have an incredible amount of gas. We can all laugh and roll our eyes in our head about, what that sounds like, but my audience knows what that means. And what that means is give a shit that you can't teach it, folks. You can't take a course in it. You can't get trained in it. You can't get a book on it. Everybody has a natural level baked in them. And this woman, no bull, has so much. You feel the energy coming off of her, how she just wants to make a difference for people in their lives, not just companies. And that resonates with me more than you can imagine. So a little bit about Katharine. She started out in the financial sector originally as an accountant, but then realized that she wanted to make a difference with people more than numbers, even though she had the numbers background. And in so doing, she has become one of the top consultants in Phoenix to some pretty large companies in helping them become more aligned with themselves, the people to the purpose. And if they're acquiring companies, get all those companies to be aligned together. She does other things, but that is one of the great gifts that she offers many of the companies here in Arizona. So Katharine Halpin, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Andrew. It's just a privilege to be with you anytime, but especially now during these trying times with the coronavirus, it's great to be connected.
It is,
Zoom.
and that's
Thank
why you're welcome, and it is, and that's why I'm stepping up the number of business member spotlights and interviews that I'm doing, is to try and help people and make people realize how many special people there are in this world doing special things. And yes, you're a service provider just like anybody else, just like I am, but there are truly special people making a difference, not just in the bottom line, but in how they do it. Like I always say, Katharine, there's many ways to get to success. Attila the Hun was enormously successful.
That's right.
Gandhi was enormously successful. The question you want to ask yourself is, how do you want to get there?
Right.
Which path do you want to lead to success? And there are people that I find that are exemplary in this, and you're one of those people.
Well, thank you.
So Katharine, question for you. And I ask this question of everyone, where do you think this very high level of empathy and care that you have comes from? Why do you care or have so much gas compared to the average person? Where does that come from?
Well, I don't actually know where it comes from. I think it's just part of my DNA, but I do know that it first showed up when I was 5 years old. I had two younger siblings and a third younger sibling on the way. And I had two parents who were just the life of the party, fun-loving, not so great on getting us to church on time and school on time. And so I put my hands on my hips in my mama's messy kitchen, and I to myself, somebody has got to make a few decisions around here. I could just see it like a movie playing in my head, that my two little brothers could have a better time than my older sister and I had. And so, although we were really fortunate because we were the first two, so we did get a lot of attention and a lot of focus.
And you grew up where?
In Vicksburg, Mississippi. That's on the river, darling.
Hence why you're talking live,
right?
I got it. Okay, keep going.
So by the time I was 8 or 9 years old, I don't know exactly what age I was at the time, but my dad said to me, my dad has said to me one night at the supper table on Friday night, he said, "Hey, you could come into the office with me tomorrow morning." And I started going into his CPA firm. And of course, I was only 8 or 9 years old, so the only thing I could do was operate the microfiche machine. That's all I could do. He taught me how to push those two buttons and flip those bank statements over and take those pictures. And then, but by the time I was 12, I was going in after school and I was doing data entry. And by the time I was 15 or 16, I was a key person in that CPA firm. And my dad was super, super intelligent. But not a lot of common sense, and I have a lot of common sense. So we made a good team, and so it's a long story, but that's how I got into the
part. Where does you're somebody that I know everybody that knows you says very similar things, not only in how good you are, like your book behind you, Alignment for Success, which is how I described you, but how you get people there.
Yes.
You know,
Well, so
I talked about, you know, those two people. How you get them there is such a, it's actually beautiful. It's like this loving journey you take them on.
And then they create that loving journey with their people, so it cascades across their whole company.
Yeah, but it
it's so
comes
magical.
from you.
Well,
And so let's make sure we cap this off properly, though. So so you got involved with your dad. Where did the caring come from? Was just that your dad included you, and that he gave you the ability to really find yourself as to what you wanted to do with your life? And
no, none of that.
okay, so what was it?
Well, I think it was a relationship with him. You know, we was kind of codependent, and so I was overly focused on his happiness and his needs and whatever. So that's what gives me the ability to put myself aside. And when I'm with a client or a leadership team, I'm totally focused on what do they need? How can I make sure everybody's included? Everybody feels like they get to participate. Everybody feels like they have a voice, that everybody knows that their opinion matters. And whether they're the summer intern or the frontline engineer or accountant or whatever, you know, we just want to make sure everybody feels really included. That's how my parents ran a household. We just had all kind of people through that house all
now
the time.
This explains everything. So it's how it was in your house,
Right.
how it was when you were at your dad's company.
Yes.
You wanted to please him.
Yes.
And you wanted to make sure that
he had what he needed.
And that you cared for him so much.
Oh, yes, such a deep love.
That you loved him so much that your work was centered around love. And you created that pattern. That explains a lot as to why you are the way you are. Now I get it. Thank you.
And even though both of my parents were, you know, not really equipped to be parents, they were like, who are these 5 little short people running around our house? And why are they so needy? 3 meals a day and all that was just too much. But they were loving people. They never met a stranger. They both were such loving and such gracious people. Everybody, our friends, their friends, our neighbors, strangers. That my mother would meet people. She met some people from Estonia at the grocery store, invited them for Thanksgiving dinner. They just were so welcoming.
My mom does the same thing. That's awesome.
Yeah, so, and all races and all ethnicities.
So that explains a lot.
I
mean, that explains a lot in the Katharine that I know.
Thank you,
so
Andrew.
Thank you for sharing. That. So you were in the accounting profession for a long time and moved your way up.
Well, when you count my 8, when you start at 8, yeah, you get a lot of years fast.
So you were an accountant or an executive in accounting company, some large companies, because I'm aware of your background.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say I was ever an executive. I was, you know, I was a key player always, because I always made sure I was delivering, you know, over delivering.
You weren't a CEO or C-level.
No, definitely not.
High level at some of these companies.
But see, when I was 27, because I had so much work experience, I went to work. Well, maybe 28. 1987, I went to work for a CEO because I had such a depth of experience.
That's correct.
They brought me in to start an internal audit function in an organization with about 350 employees. And that's where I learned about the importance of the CEO being strategic and being inclusive and being transparent. And
so he was a good role model, he or she?
Well, just like with my dad, you know, you learn from the good and the bad. So I wouldn't say they were brilliant, but I will say it was a very volatile environment. And so we had, I only worked there 2.5 years, but I reported to 3 CEOs in that 2.5 years because he left, he retired, the one that hired me. And then they brought in an interim. So I reported to the interim and I reported to the board too, because I'm internal audit. And then they brought in a third one. So I got to see 3 different CEOs and their approach to being a CEO of a company that size, and their impact, how they impact, each one of them impacted in a different way.
So when did you decide I mean, you were more than 20 years, I think, into your career, and you decided, I need a change. I need to do something.
Well, in 1992, I was working for a firm out of Chicago in the Dallas office, and that was a big regional office for them. And they said, if you go to the Phoenix office, it's a much smaller office, you'd be the number 2 person in a 2-person office. And so I freaked me out because it had been hard enough for me to get from Vicksburg to Dallas. It never occurred to me that I would leave Dallas. So I waited a week. I couldn't even bring myself to tell my wife for a whole week. And finally, I told her after a week. We were traveling. We were on the East Coast on vacation when I told her. And she said, well, of course, it's your career. We have to go. And her dad had moved twice for his career. And so we packed up and moved here. And I didn't like anything about the company when there was some, of course, big company staffing changes. The guy who had recruited me to come here got fired between when I put my house on the market and when I arrived in Phoenix. But we loved Phoenix, and that was a turning point for me. I said, I don't want to do this accounting stuff. I really want to find something where I can work for people.
And this was when?
We arrived here at Thanksgiving in 1992, and by about March 93, I said that. And so I enrolled in a training program to be a mediator in about March of 93. But you can't, even if you're a retired federal judge, you can't really make a living, a full-time living as a mediator. There's just not that much mediation going on even today. But I kept taking the training because I love that whole notion of win, 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 win. Let's get everybody to be a winner here. Let's stay in the conversation. And then in 1995, I heard the term business coach, and I was like, what is that? And I came home and I told Bonnie, I said, I think I'm going to be a business coach. She said, well, that's all well and good, but you got to keep your day job. So I got to, and then synchronistically, I found one of the first 2 coach training schools. I got trained to be a coach from Coach U, and I kept my day job for 18 months, and then I launched. But within 6 months, in January of 97, I went full time. And so by the summer of 97, I was a facilitator. I would say to these business owners, this is complicated. And you should not be making this decision in a vacuum. Let's pull your team together and let's get, I'll facilitate and we'll get the best practices out on the table. And then to get collectively, you can make a decision, includes everybody will buy-in. So I went from facilitating those events to facilitating whole processes. Exit planning, succession planning. New CEOs brought me in many of them called it CEO boot camp. I've never been a CEO, been a COO, never been a CEO. Katharine, I need you to train me. And I'd never been a CEO either, but I had been working for them since I was 27 years old, and I'd seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. So that's how I got here. So I'm a facilitator of processes that typically accelerate the growth of a company, even if they bring me in for exit planning. My methods will still grow the company in that transition.
And so some pretty sizable companies have worked with you, down to smaller companies to help them with growth. Mm-hmm. So when did you write your book Behind You? It's basically a culmination of of your work and your lessons learned, I guess.
Yes.
And when did you write that?
Well, I started that process in 2008. And my original idea would be that I would write a book about one of my programs. It's called the Step Up or Step Out program. And it creates a really safe, encouraging work environment where people can get clear. Like, do I really have the strengths to be successful in this role? Or should I take a sideways step? Or should I self-select out this company or self-select into a different role? So I made a list of all the clients I'd had up until that point and all the people that they had used that program with. And I had, dozens of stories, and I tape recorded them because that was before the smartphone. You couldn't record on your phone at that time. And my colleague, Matthew Howard, transcribed those. And then I hired a ghostwriter. This is in 2008, right after the downturn, because I said, I'm going to have more time on my hands. Let me invest in a book. So, Matthew transcribed them, and then he emailed them to a ghostwriter. It was a total waste of time and money because that guy didn't even try to find Katharine's voice. But he did tell me how to get a literary agent. It's very unusual for a first-time author to get a literary agent, but because it was all about accountability, but in his soft Mississippi way, which is quite unique, I did get a literary agent. But it was a husband and wife team, and she went to bed at 2 a.m. and he went to bed at 8 p.m., so they were never aligned.
Oh my God.
So he would write stuff in the margin of the hard copies. We were sending these hard copies of the manuscript back and forth, and he would write, actually, we didn't even get to the manuscript. He said, we're going to put that manuscript aside and we're going to write a book proposal. And then I'll shop that book proposal and then I'll be a term in your contract with the publisher. So we were working back and forth on the book proposal. And he would write in this flowery, real flowery language. And I'm like, well, that's not how I say it. But, you know, he's the expert. And then she would get it and she'd write in the margin, oh, really? So I wasted 2.5 years. I wasted a year or two with a ghostwriter, and then I wasted 2.5 years with them. And then finally I called Matthew and I said, Matthew, I just got to get a book. He said, we've written so much, because he was right there typing it up. Everything I recorded, he typed up and edited it. He said, let's don't write another book. Let's just compile one from what you've already done. So then the book came together in 90 days. I was scheduled to go to the National Speaker Association conference in July of 2014. No, 2014. And my dear friend and mentor, Bill Johnson, passed away in May. And I knew it would be too sad to go without him. And so I didn't go. I said, well, I got these 4 days on my calendar. I'm going to save them and I'm going to compile a book. And I did that. And I sent it. I had 35,000 words. I sent it to Matthew. He sent it back in a month with 20,000 words. I didn't see that I was repetitive, but he did. And he took all that repetitiveness out and got it into the 5 chapters. He's really a developmental editor, but although neither he nor I had that title in 2014. And so we published, we self-published on Amazon. He had published books already on Amazon because he's a writer and a poet and a creative guy. And so we self-published, and I just wanted it to be like a business card. I didn't expect it would be so well received, but I have 62 5-star reviews on Amazon.
I know. I mean,
people love it.
It's a great book.
And let me just say one more thing. One of my clients, former clients at that time, was a head of HR for a huge company, 6,000 employees. I sent her and all her colleagues a copy of the book, and then I called her about a different topic, and I said, I want to get some feedback about the book while we're on the phone. She said, well, I got it sitting right here on my desk. And so then we talked about the other topic. Then I said, now really, seriously, give me some feedback on the book. She said, I told you, I have it right here on my desk. I use it as a reference. When stuff comes up, 6,000 employees, when stuff comes up, it's always going to come up. She was using it as her resource manual.
So let's expand on this, and then we've got to, because I try to keep it 25 minutes. Why is the service that you provide these companies more important now than ever?
Well, first of all,
given what's going on.
Yeah, I'm doing a lot of free webinars on how to avoid a layoff using my methods. Because a month ago, my clients couldn't get good employees. There were no good employees out there. Everybody was already swept up because unemployment was so low. So now, a month later, we're thinking, we're going to have to do a layoff. Well, if you do a layoff, it takes you about a decade to recover not your brand with your customers or the general public, but the employer of choice brand. People have to be the employer of choice if they want to attract A players and retain those A players. And if you have a layoff, you're not going to get any millennials to come to work there. They're going to like, well, these people are not values-based. They laid people off at the worst of times. And of course you have to right size, but my methods will help you right size. And
can you give us one small tip from
yes. Oh, I'll give you my big tip. This is part of my secret sauce. This is why I've been in business.
Hey, I know that phrase.
The 25 years coming up this summer, I've been in business since I was, started as part-time in 95. The key to all of my work, and the reason I've been so successful and been able to stay in business for 25 years, is that I hold people's hands and I make it real safe and easy for them to take personal responsibility. If you have somebody that's on your team that's a questionable performer, they're inconsistent, or they're a poor performer, if you take personal responsibility for the role you've played in that process, and if you think back there's 1,000 things that you could have done differently in hindsight, looking backwards. If you just take responsibility for a few of those things, it creates a safe space for that person to take responsibility. And now we have workability, and we can
Now, what I always say, you're so right. What I always say, it's not your fault, it's your responsibility.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
We're so quick to put blame on
Yes.
ourselves and others when blame doesn't get you where you need to go.
Right.
So if you shift the thinking, which is what you're saying, from look, it's not your fault, it's just
Your responsibility. We got to
responsibility,
right to
and it's
clean
up
this
to
up.
us to figure out how we can get there now.
Right.
So
right.
I love that, Katharine.
Yeah.
So one last question before I ask how people can get in touch with you is so you explained some tips and what people can do now. What if I was to ask you this, what help do you need now? Because everybody's going through some changes, right? So I have an audience listening to this. If they could make a difference in your life, what's the kind of help Katharine
Well, I bring alignment to organizations in periods of change. So all of the industries that are thriving right now, like technology, my technology clients are overwhelmed because they're getting so much work. They're getting some clients that want to, scale back temporarily, but they're also getting new work from new clients. So logistics company, trucking companies, anybody that's growing right now, food distribution, I can help build alignment and minimize that chaos and confusion of that rapid growth. So anybody that knows anybody in those fast growing industries right now, you'd be doing those people a favor to introduce them to me, because I feel like it's a disservice.
Companies because this is a brutal reality of how the world works. During downtimes, certain companies thrive and some companies don't.
And manufacturing is another one that's thriving, especially if you're in a med tech.
Well, it depends what manufacturing.
Yeah.
I know somebody in manufacturing who's not thriving.
Oh.
So if you know a company right now that's experiencing almost uncontrollable growth where they need to create order out of chaos.
That's what I do.
This is what this woman does. So how do they get in touch with you?
Well, our website is www.halpin, Halpin, and our phone number is 602-266-1961.
So halpin.com?
halpincompany.com.
Okay.
Although it should be halpin.com. I never thought of that. And then I'm all over social media, but you have to know how to spell Katharine. It's like Katharine Hepburn, Katharine. And then Halpin is Halp as in Peter, In as in Nathan, Katharine
You can
Halpin.
find her, of course, in LinkedIn.
Yes.
And so go to her website. This woman has a stellar reputation in Phoenix.
And I've worked from Juneau, Alaska to Brussels, Belgium. So I've worked across the globe.
But I'm just basing it on what I know.
Your network.
And executives I know who've worked with you.
Yeah.
You have a stellar reputation. You definitely not only affect the bottom line, you affect morale, you affect purpose and passion, and you do it in a loving way, not a fun. And, but like I said, how do you want to get to where you want to get? And so, Katharine, you are a gem. Thank you for being you. Thank you,
my dear friend,
for being on my show.
Thank you.
I'm going to hit pause and we'll talk after. So everyone, thanks for listening. Go help Katharine. Make a difference in someone's life. As I always say, it's good business to make a difference in the lives of those we do business with and seek business from. Even though things may be hard for you, don't forget, you have to take care of yourself, the people you care about in your family, your friends, and your company. And then you also have to take care of your community. Make a difference. Katharine, thank you.
Amen. Thank you so much, my dear friend. Thanks, Andrew. That was great.